I was the envy of every woman in the capital. The powerful first assistant, Shen Yan-chu, had only one wife, me, and no concubines. He loved me as if I were his very life. But I knew that inside the sandalwood box he treasured most were letters filled with his longing for my elder sister by blood. Every word was dripping with tenderness. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back to the day he came to propose. I returned the engagement jade pendant to him and called off the betrothal. Yet he gripped my wrist tightly, his eyes bloodshot, pleading, "Yao Nyang, please don't leave me." Dear one. At the moment of my death, Shen Yan-chu, who had been absent from the first assistant's residence for half a year, finally returned. "Madam, are you still well?" Hearing his voice, I struggled to open my eyes and saw the man who had shattered my heart. His hair had turned completely white, but he was still handsome. He looked just like the elegant, jade-like youth I had first met. I still remembered that day vividly. I had mischievously climbed a tree and got stuck, terrified and trembling, about to fall. Just as I thought I was about to crash to the ground, I fell into a pair of warm arms. I looked up and met his impossibly handsome gaze. Back then, he lowered his eyes and chuckled softly. "Third Miss He, are you all right?" It was love at first sight. And from that moment on, my heart belonged to him, hopelessly and completely. But after we married, he never again called me Third Mississippi. Nor did he ever call me Yao Nyang. He only addressed me as Madam. Polite. Distant. At first, I comforted myself, thinking he was just a man of few words, cold and reserved by nature. But later, by accident, I found letter after letter in his study, letters he had written to my elder sister. In them, he called her Rong Nyang. Every word was filled with passionate tenderness, the kind of love he had never once shown me. It was then I realized he had never loved me at all. Thinking of this, tears blurred my vision and slid down my cheeks. My voice trembled weakly. "Master, could you call me Yao Nyang just once?" "Madam." His brows furrowed slightly, as if annoyed. It was just wishful thinking on my part. I turned my gaze to the silk tree outside the window, the one I had planted on the first day after our marriage. At some point, it had withered and died, just like my feelings, drained dry by the vast, cold halls of the first assistant's residence. "Shen Yan-chu, in the next life, I don't want to love you anymore. Loving you is too exhausting. I don't want to marry you again either. This first assistant's residence is too big and too cold." My eyes closed weakly. In a haze, I thought I heard Shen Yan-chu's voice, choked with sobs. "Yao Nyang, don't leave me." But it must have been my imagination. A man like Shen Yan-chu, cold to the bone, would never shed tears for me. All I wished for was never to meet Shen Yan-chu again in the next life. But when I opened my eyes once more and saw the young Shen Yan-chu standing before me, I was completely stunned. He was kneeling rigidly on the ground, face solemn. "Today I have achieved the top honors in the imperial examination and only now dare to come to your noble household to propose. I beg the general to allow me to marry his beloved daughter." Shen Yan-chu's face was still breathtakingly handsome, but now carried a hint of youthful earnestness. His voice was clear and crisp, like jade striking stone, snapping me back to reality. I had been reborn. I had actually returned to the day of my coming-of-age ceremony, the very day Shen Yan-chu came to propose. Dear 02. The main courtyard was filled with laughter as everyone covered their mouths to chuckle. But there was no malice in their smiles. Even my parents were beaming at me warmly. Everyone knew I adored Shen Yan-chu. Given his proposal, how could I possibly refuse? And Shen Yan-chu knew it too. So when he saw my father nod, he stepped forward, drew out a jade pendant, and presented it to me, saying, "Third Miss He, this pendant was left to me by my late mother. It has been passed down through generations of Shen family daughters-in-law, symbolizing harmony and love in marriage. Today, I hand it to you, wishing for a life of shared devotion as my mother once dreamed." The words were exactly the same as in my previous life, but fate had turned otherwise. I did spend a lifetime with Shen Yan-chu, but without a shred of love. In this new life, I refused to spend lonely night after lonely night in the cold halls of the first assistant's residence. I was greedy now. I didn't want only a high status without love. It was too bitter and too exhausting. I didn't reach out to accept the jade pendant. The lively chatter in the courtyard gradually quieted, everyone staring at me in shock and confusion. Keeping a calm expression, I slowly took a step back. Under Shun Yan-chu's startled gaze, I smiled brightly. Shun Yan-chu, I won't marry you. This time, I wanted to find someone who truly loved me. 03. My coming-of-age ceremony ended hastily because of my refusal. Before Shun Yan-chu left, he stared at me in silence for a long time, then forcibly pressed the jade pendant into my palm. I'll wait for you to agree, he said. Without giving me a chance to refuse, he turned and left without looking back. Had I not known his heart belonged to someone else, I might have been fooled into thinking he was deeply in love with me. Just then, the door was pushed open and someone strode in, speaking sharply. Jing Yao, what exactly are you trying to do? The voice was both familiar and strange. It was my elder sister by blood, He Rong, the very woman Shin Yan-chu had loved. She wore a green top and red skirt, a gold hairpin glinting in her hair. Her beauty was breathtaking, every smile and gesture exuding noble elegance. It was impossible to look away from her. For a moment I was dazed. She furrowed her brow and asked again. Didn't you always like Yan-chu? Why are you making such a scene now? She had said the same thing in my past life. When I discovered Shun Yan-chu's heart was full of her, I wanted to divorce him out of despair. But Shun Yan-chu refused. Because my elder sister wouldn't allow it. By then, Shun Yan-chu held one of the highest positions in the court, and my sister didn't want to lose her connection to him through me, even if it meant I suffered. She had sat high on her throne, her gaze cold as ice. You love Shun Yan-chu, don't you? Then why are you making trouble now? Staring at the woman before me, her figure gradually overlapped with the icy image of the Empress in my memories. I suddenly spoke. But he's in love with you. He Rong was momentarily stunned, but didn't show much surprise. So what? Will that make me Empress? At that moment, it felt like I had plunged into a frozen abyss. She had known all along. She had known Shun Yan-chu loved her, and still pushed for our marriage. Just so the Shin family would be tied firmly to her. Just so Shun Yan-chu could be used for her future dreams of becoming Empress. To her, I was no longer a sister, but a pawn to be played. Whether the pawn lived well or suffered, she had never cared. My heart turned utterly cold. My voice hardened. Elder sister, if you want to climb to the highest position, that's your business. But I won't sacrifice myself for you anymore. 04. That night, I had a dream. In the dream, I went back to the moment when I first discovered those letters. Back then, I was shocked and utterly disgusted. I couldn't believe that the husband I adored with all my heart was actually in love with my own elder sister. I clutched the letters and confronted him, spitting out my contempt for his disgraceful and filthy feelings, condemning him as worthless. But through it all, he only stared at me, his face utterly expressionless. He just watched as I screamed, raged, and finally collapsed to the ground, crying so hard I could barely breathe. I hated that cold, unfeeling look of his. In a fit of rage, I lashed out without thinking. I'm going to tear them all up. They're disgusting. Shun Rong is my elder sister. You are my husband, and yet you two secretly conspired together. It's nothing short of betrayal and incest. You should be ashamed. Shun Yan-chu, you're a despicable man who tramples on every boundary of decency. You make me sick. Before I could finish, he suddenly grabbed my chin, his eyes flashing with a vicious glint. I disgust you? Then what about you, who loves someone as disgusting as me? Aren't you even worse? Lightning flashed across the sky, and in that moment, he looked just like a demon. I woke up with a start, gasping for air. It took a long while before I could calm down. The next morning, when I saw the figure standing outside my courtyard, I instinctively turned to leave. But the man stepped forward and blocked my path. Shun Yen Chu's eyes were bloodshot. When he looked at me, it felt like he was trying to suppress something deep inside. He raised his hand, trying to touch me. I recoiled in disgust. His face instantly turned pale, and he looked like he could barely stand. I couldn't understand. How could he have changed so much in just one night? Before I could figure it out, he spoke, his voice low, hoarse, trembling. Yao Nyang, why won't you marry me? 05. I stared at him for a long time, taking my time, examining him carefully. Instead of answering his question, I suddenly said, "You just called me Yao Nyang." His face flushed red, and he opened his mouth to explain. But I cut him off before he could. "I won't marry you because I refuse to live the same life I did in the past, Shan Yen Chu." His face turned deathly pale. A breeze stirred the air, carrying a faint chill. But my voice was clear and sharp, cutting through the morning air. "You came back too, didn't you? Reborn just like me." He froze, staring at me in shock, his thin lips trembling slightly. How did you know?" I smiled faintly. "Because I know you too well." I had spent an entire lifetime with Shan Yen Chu. He might not have loved me, but I had loved him. When you love someone, you can't help but observe their every move, every habit. Besides, in my previous life, Shan Yen Chu had never once called me Yao Nyang. Nor could he have known just how much I longed to hear that intimacy from him. But even that longing had long since been worn away by the bitterness of my past life. All that remained was a barren wasteland in my heart. I didn't love Shan Yen Chu anymore. He seemed to realize what I was about to say. Instinctively, he took a step closer, reaching out to hold my hand. I avoided him. This time, my gaze was more serious than it had ever been. "Shan Yen Chu, since both of us have been given a second chance at life, let's not entangle ourselves anymore. The person you love was never me, and I no longer love you. Our entanglement in our past lives was a mistake, and a mistake should not be repeated." Looking back at our former lives, our seemingly perfect marriage was nothing but a ruin beneath the surface. A first assistant's wife longing desperately for her husband's affection. A first assistant whose heart was filled with dreams of another woman, a future empress. We made a pair who could never truly love each other. The massive, magnificent first assistant's residence was nothing but an endless torment, cold and desolate at every turn. The first assistant's lady, who sat there day after day with a serene face, neither happy nor angry, like a living Buddha. I didn't want to be her anymore. It's too exhausting and too painful. Since I had been given a new life, I refused to be anyone's pawn or accessory. This time, I wanted to live for myself. I turned and walked away, moving in the opposite direction of Shan Yen Chu. But behind me, his low voice reached my ears. "What if I insist on making the same mistake again?" I froze. Turning back, I met his dark, pitch-black eyes. In their depths, emotions churned, unclear, intense.
Scalding. Fierce.
I couldn't understand them. "Shan Yen Chu," I said steadily, "you are willing to marry a woman you didn't love for the sake of my elder sister. But I am not willing to marry a man I don't love." Sunlight poured down on me. I lifted my hand, as if trying to catch a ray of that warmth in my palm. When I looked back, I saw Shan Yen Chu standing there, utterly stunned. I spoke clearly, word by word. "I told you, I will not marry you, and you will never marry me." 06. That day, Shan Yen Chu left the He residence in a daze. He never came back again. Instead, it was my elder sister who came to see me. "Third sister, I never treated you like a pawn," she said softly. "I thought you liked Shan Yen Chu. Being with him should have made you happy. As for his feelings for me, he never mentioned anything. I never had any affection for him, either." Always so strong and decisive, my elder sister rarely showed such gentleness. But today, she spoke to me in a tender, soothing voice. I stayed silent for a long time. It wasn't until she withdrew her hand, her face clouded with disappointment, that I finally spoke. Elder sister, no matter what, I will not marry Shen Yanchu. So there was no need for her to persuade me. Hearing this, her fingertips trembled slightly, but she still smiled and said, "It's all right. As long as you're happy, that's what matters. Shen Yanchu is, of course, not more important than you." Really? Because in my previous life, I had accidentally discovered the truth. Even the way Shen Yanchu and I first met had been orchestrated by my elder sister. She had deliberately set it up, so I would fall in love with him. Once I married into the Shin family, once the two families were connected by marriage, my elder sister could boldly control Shen Yanchu as she pleased. In this life, would my elder sister truly be willing to give up such a capable man so easily? I stared at her smiling face, and for some reason, a faint unease crept into my heart. 07. A few days later, Mother planned to visit Qixia Temple to offer incense and stay there for 3 days. As always, I was to accompany her. This time was no exception. Mother also brought along my younger half-sister, who was about to come of age, so she could pray for the health of her ailing birth mother, third aunt. But when I boarded the carriage, I was surprised to find my elder sister already sitting inside. "You're going too, elder sister?" In my memory, my elder sister had never believed in gods or spirits. She had always scoffed at such things and never once sought blessings at a temple. Smiling, she nodded. Mother sighed softly and explained, "The fertility goddess at Qixia Temple is said to be very powerful. Your elder sister is going to pray, hoping to conceive a royal heir soon." At those words, a shadow passed over my elder sister's beautiful face. She had married the crown prince 2 years ago. After giving birth to a princess, she had failed to conceive again. Though the crown prince did not blame her, the empress had grown increasingly dissatisfied. Just last year, the empress had even sent her own niece into the crown prince's residence as a concubine. Behind closed doors in the imperial city, people were whispering that my elder sister struggled with fertility. The absence of a royal son was a thorn in her heart. Given that, it wasn't so strange that she would make this pilgrimage. When we arrived at Qixia Temple, the abbot informed us that there weren't enough rooms. Only my elder sister and mother could each have a private room. I was to share a room with my fourth sister. That night, I sat on the bed, letting my hair down. The moonlight poured through the window like water, cascading over my dark hair, making it gleam like the finest silk. I sensed a gaze falling on me. Turning around, I saw Hixia, the fourth sister, staring at me. I frowned in confusion. "Fourth sister, what's wrong?" Startled, Hixia flinched and stammered. "And nothing. I just suddenly thought third sister is even more beautiful than elder sister." I smiled faintly and lay down. Hixia gave me one last glance, then walked over to the table. She took a deep breath and lightly flicked the candlewick with her fingernail. A faint, almost imperceptible fragrance began to spread through the room. But the next second, I seized her hand. Hixia gasped, nearly letting out a scream. I clamped a hand over her mouth. Sighing, I asked, "Fourth sister, what did elder sister promise you to make you help her?" I released her. Hixia stumbled back, falling to the floor in terror. "This incense, elder sister gave it to you, didn't she?" I said coldly. "It's meant to make someone fall unconscious. Shen Yanchu must be waiting nearby, ready to force a scandal between us. Once that happens, even if I don't want to marry him, I'll have no choice to save my reputation." Hixia's face turned ashen, and she shook her head desperately. I pressed forward, placing a sharp dagger against her pale neck, my expression icy. "Fourth sister, don't think I'll show mercy just because you're family." Staring at the glinting blade, Hixia's face drained of all color. Sobbing in fear, she pleaded frantically, "Third sister, don't kill me. I'll tell you everything." As it turned out, my elder sister wasn't quite as despicable as I feared, but she wasn't far off. Originally, she had planned to set fire to the rooms. When I was at death's door, Shen Yanchu would swoop in to save me. By then, under the watchful eyes of all, with physical contact between us, whether I wanted to or not. I would be forced to marry him. Otherwise, my reputation would be ruined. As expected, my elder sister had never truly given up. She would stop at nothing to achieve her goals, selfish and ruthless. She had always treated me as a pawn. The so-called sisterly affection crumbled completely in the face of her hunger for power. Elder sister promised me, Xia sobbed, that if I helped her, she would marry me off to the sixth prince as a concubine. A mere illegitimate daughter marrying into the royal family as a concubine. All she had to do was help put me to sleep. It was, indeed, a good deal. Third sister, if you want to expose elder sister before father and mother, I'll cooperate. I'll tell them everything. You're mistaken. I smiled faintly, but my eyes were cold as ice. Elder sister schemed against me. Of course, I must return the favor. Hearing this, Xia, who had been weeping on the floor, suddenly looked up. Her face filled with shock. 08. Late that night, a sudden scream shattered the silence. The back courtyard of Qixia Temple was thrown into chaos. Out of nowhere, a fire broke out, and it spread with terrifying speed. In mere moments, the entire rear courtyard was engulfed in flames. Everyone rushed over to fight the fire, but faced with the roaring inferno, they hesitated, afraid to get too close, let alone rescue anyone trapped inside. Madame He, my mother, frantically searched for her 3 daughters. I calmly reassured her, "Mother, don't panic." Only the crown princess had yet to come out. Just as the fire grew fiercer, a figure suddenly burst through the flames. It was Shun Yanchu. Madame He, overwhelmed with relief, rushed over and sobbed while holding onto Hirong. I stood at the side, watching it all with cold detachment, a faint smile tugging at the corner of my lips. When Hirong finally woke up, it was already noon the next day. Mother gently fed her water and, while listening to the servants recount last night's events, her gaze suddenly sharpened and landed squarely on me when the mention of arson came up. "You set me up?" I nodded calmly. "Yes." The room fell into stunned silence. Mother looked at me in shock. "Jingyao, why would you scheme against your own elder sister? Don't you realize how close you came to costing her life?" "She wouldn't have died," I said indifferently. I had already arranged for people to be ready to put out the fire. Mother was confused. "Then why?" Lowering my gaze, I looked directly at Hirong and let out a cold laugh. I was merely returning the favor. "Crown Princess, wouldn't you agree?" Mother froze. "Wrong are you?" Seeing the dark and uncertain expression on Hirong's face and recalling everything from last night, realization dawned on her all at once. Stunned, horrified, she gasped, "You're insane." "I'm not insane." Hirong raised her head, her gaze steady and fearless as she looked at me. "Everything I did was for the sake of the He family. Shun Yanchu is no ordinary man. He's destined to rise high in the court. If third sister married him, it would strengthen both the He family and the crown prince's standing. The crown prince's position may look secure, but wolves circle him on every side. Every step is fraught with danger. With the Shun family tied to us by marriage, I could rely on Shun Yanchu with peace of mind. It's a win-win. Why wouldn't I do it?" Mother was furious and trembling with rage. "But that doesn't give you the right to set up your own sister. She's your blood. How could you tarnish her reputation and force her into marriage just for your own gain?" Hirong let out a cold, mocking laugh. "She's just confused now. One day, when she's the first assistant's wife, living a life of wealth and honor, envied by all of the capital, she'll thank me." She spoke with such righteousness, as if she was the only one truly in the right. The room fell deathly silent. Then I spoke softly. "Elder sister, do you really believe that marrying a man who thinks only of you will bring me happiness and fulfillment? Why lie to me and to yourself?" She frowned, her voice cold with reprimand. "Love? What good is love? How many marriages built on love ever end well? Love fades, promises break. But power, you can depend on that. Wealth and rank will never betray you. Third sister, why can't you understand? I do understand. I understand it all. Throughout history, betrayals have been far more common than lasting devotion. But my voice echoed lightly, almost hollowly, through the room. But I've had enough of the life you speak of. Even if I held power and wealth in my hands, even if everyone envied me, in the end, it would still be a lonely life, spent waiting in vain, with no one to ask after me. Decades of that in my previous life had already worn me down to the bone.
09.
My mother and Hirong were both stunned by the bleak emptiness in my voice. I was not yet 20, and yet my eyes carried the weariness of someone who had lived a lifetime. But truly, I was tired. Too tired to hide it anymore. Looking at the two of them, I said quietly, "Elder sister only left the capital secretly. Only those inside the Crown Prince's residence knew. The Crown Prince's secondary consort, who has always envied and hated elder sister, could very well have been behind it. Besides, the Crown Prince cherishes you. A little show of vulnerability would only make him treasure you more for surviving this ordeal. But if it had been me trapped in that fire last night, then my fate would have been simple. Either I would have had to marry Xin Yan-chu to preserve my reputation and ensure the marriage prospects of all He family daughters. Or I would have been forced to spend the rest of my life alone, living in seclusion with only a lamp for company." A cold smile tugged at my lips. Not just on my face, but from deep within my heart. So no matter how noble your words sound, in reality, you never cared about my wishes or the He family's well-being. You cared only about your own gain. Every word was heavy with sorrow. Sorrow for how fragile sisterhood could be. Sorrow that, even after living a second life, I was still trapped in such cruel entanglements. But I didn't regret it. If I hadn't fought back today, hadn't shown elder sister that I was no longer a lamb to be slaughtered, the only one hurt would have been me. Hirong trembled, trying to explain. "Third sister, I really..." But this time, I didn't reach out to hold her hand. I simply looked her in the eye, my voice steady and firm. "Hirong, from this day forward, the bond between us as sisters is broken. You may be the crown princess, the empress, even the empress dowager someday, but you are no longer my elder sister." With that, I turned and left. Behind me, Hirong's hoarse voice called out desperately, "Third sister, Jing Yao." There was a dull thud as she fell from her bed. I didn't look back. When I reached the doorway, I found Xin Yan-chu standing there, waiting. The window had been left open. He must have heard every word. When he finally spoke, his voice was terribly hoarse. "Yao Nyang, I didn't agree to her plan. I wanted to tell you. But I finished for him. But you didn't." His jaw tightened, his entire body tense. "You didn't agree, yet you still followed along. You came because you knew elder sister would stop at nothing once she set her mind to something." I stated calmly, "You can never harden your heart against her. Last life. This life."
It was always the same.
He opened his mouth as if to say something, but I interrupted him again. "Shen Yan-chu, I'm leaving." This capital, beneath its glittering surface, was nothing but filth and schemes. Even sisters bound by blood were not exempt. It disgusted me. I needed to clear my mind. I needed to leave. Maybe somewhere else, things would feel a little lighter. I heard him ask, "When will you come back?" I shook my head. "I don't know. Maybe soon. Maybe never."
10.
I traveled lightly, riding in a simple carriage. After half a month of wandering, I finally arrived at Suliang City, where my maternal grandmother lived. When I was a year old, my parents were assigned to a post in the northwest. My mother, worried that I was too young to endure the hardship, sent me to live with my grandmother. I stayed there for 8 full years. My uncle and aunt had no daughters of their own, only 3 mischievous boys who gave my aunt endless headaches, so they doted on me all the more, cherishing the only little girl in the household. My aunt would personally make sweet rice cakes for me, tie up my hair, kiss my cheeks, and call me her little darling. Of course, my mother loved me too. But she worried more about my elder sister and cared more about the prosperity of the He family. I never blamed her, just like I naturally loved my aunt more. In my previous life, when my aunt learned I was living a miserable life in the capital, she had even tried to make a scene at court to forcibly take me away. By now, counting both lifetimes, it had been decades since we last met. As soon as I got off the carriage, someone grabbed my hand, and I heard my aunt's slightly choked voice beside my ear. "My darling, my little darling, you're finally home." My own hands trembled as I buried myself in her arms. The familiar warmth enveloped me. "Auntie," I whispered. At that moment, a clear, cheerful voice called out from the side. "Mother, don't scare Yao Nyang." Then another teasing voice chimed in. "Yes, Mother. Grandmother is still waiting eagerly for third sister inside. We should go in first." I looked up and saw two young men smiling warmly at me. They were my two older cousins. Instantly, I flushed with embarrassment at my earlier display of emotion. Yes, Mother is still waiting," I mumbled. Auntie wiped away her tears, then gently wiped the tears from my cheeks too, smiling brightly as she clutched my hand tightly, as if afraid I would run off. "Yao Nyang, Auntie made your favorite sweet rice cakes. You must try them later and tell me if they still taste the same." Chatting and laughing, we walked toward the inner hall. Inside, a plump, silver-haired woman was waiting. The moment she saw me, tears streamed down her face, and she cried out, "Yao Nyang, come here quickly." As soon as I approached, she pulled me into a tight embrace, holding me so tightly as if never wanting to let go. I couldn't hold back anymore either, and burst into tears. Auntie also couldn't contain herself and came forward, 3 generations of us, clinging to each other, weeping and laughing at the same time. Just then, the curtain lifted. A young man entered the room. He wore a light moon-white robe, his features were handsome as carved jade, his gaze lively and bright, leaving a lasting impression at first sight. Even Shen Yan-chu, famed for his looks in the capital, would pale slightly in comparison. The young man lowered his gaze to me, long eyelashes casting gentle shadows. He smiled softly. "Third sister, you're finally back." I immediately recognized him. I bowed slightly. "Second cousin." 11. My uncle and aunt had a deep and genuine bond. Throughout his life, my uncle had only one wife, my aunt. Together, they had 3 sons, each one tall, handsome, and talented. When I was little, my eldest cousin, being a few years older, was busy with his studies and didn't have much time to play with me, though he treated me kindly. My third cousin was much younger, more of a little tag-along than a playmate. But my second cousin, Gu Xian, was closest in age to me. We had grown up together like childhood sweethearts. Our bond had always been the strongest. When I was young, I was mischievous. On drizzly days, he would hold an umbrella over us as we walked along the narrow paths. I would mischievously stomp into puddles, splashing water all over the hem of his newly changed bamboo green robe. He would glare at me, just about to scold me. But then I would pretend to cry and threaten to tattle to Andy. He would press his lips together tightly, frustrated yet helpless. All right, go ahead and jump all you want." Still, I knew when to stop. I wouldn't push my luck too far. Later, I even embroidered a sachet and gifted it to him as an apology. He quickly forgave me. The next time, he still held the umbrella and took me wandering through the streets. I remembered when I left back then, he had red-rimmed eyes, begging me not to forget him. Though so many years had passed, the memories were still vivid and bright. After dinner, Auntie asked Gu Xian to walk me back to my room. The candlelight was dim and soft. As I lifted my head to look at the young man walking beside me, the warm light filtered through the tree branches, casting a gentle glow over him. My eyelashes curved slightly upward as I spoke, my voice soft. "Second cousin, I didn't forget you." He froze for a moment. Lowering his eyes to look at me, he smiled gently, lips curving with tenderness. "Then call me Xian, just like before." I shifted my gaze toward the lanterns ahead, then nodded. "All right, Xian." He gave a low, pleased hum. "Jing Yao." We exchanged a smile. It felt just like when we were young again.
12.
Seoulyoung City might not have the bustling splendor of the capital, but it offered a freedom the capital could not. My aunt, worried I might feel suffocated or out of place, gave me free rein to go out whenever I liked. Strolling along the streets, it was common to see young girls laughing and chatting with their companions, pulling off their veils and revealing faces as fresh and beautiful as spring flowers. From a distance, the sight was even lovelier than the peach blossoms blooming along the roadside. It had been so long since I had seen such a lively, unrestrained scene. In my past life, I had to always maintain a dignified, graceful posture, upholding the honor of the first assistant's wife. Even now, reborn as the third miss of the He family, I had to smile with reserved grace, walk with elegance, never letting down the family's dignity. But here, everyone was so carefree. It didn't feel strange at all. I had almost forgotten that life could be lived so simply, so freely. Just as I was lost in thought, a deep, familiar voice came from above. "Jing Yao, do you want to take off your veil?" I clenched my hands tightly and nodded firmly. "I do." Just as my maid was about to step forward, a hand beat her to it. I lowered my gaze and saw long, slender fingers, pale and smooth like jade. With a deft motion, he gently tugged at the ribbon tied under my chin. We were standing a little too close. Instinctively, I wanted to step back. But before I could, the veil was lifted from my head and sunlight spilled down onto me. I looked up and met Gu Xian's clear, bright eyes. He smiled gently.
"There.
Now you're free." I glanced around. Surprisingly, the maids had all lowered their heads, pretending to see nothing. Even the vendors along the street, who had witnessed the scene, showed no signs of surprise. As if it were something perfectly ordinary. I couldn't help but fall into thought. Was I overthinking things? 13. Spring was still chilly. Autumn came with wind and rain. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. I had long grown accustomed to life in Seoulyoung City. The knot in my heart gradually unraveled, and when I looked back on everything, I could only sigh, so be it. Mother's letter arrived right on time. I opened it and was stunned for a moment as I read. "Jing Yao, your elder sister is pregnant, but she was framed by the secondary consort and suffered a miscarriage. The secondary consort has been demoted to commoner status. Romer is physically unharmed and only needs half a year of recovery. Because of the fire incident, although the crown prince did not blame your sister, he has started to grow distant from Shen Yanchu. At court, Shen Yanchu is constantly being suppressed and obstructed. His Majesty intends to send him to Qi County, near Seoulyoung City. Shen Yanchu still thinks of you often. In your absence, he frequently visits our house to profess his loyalty. Your elder sister asked me to remind you, his heart is unstable now and no longer fully under her control. Be careful. Jing Yao, your aunt and I have discussed your marriage. Your second cousin, Gu Xian, has long admired you. He wishes to marry you and promises a lifetime of loyalty. What are your thoughts?" One letter contained 3 pieces of news, each one more startling than the last, especially the final one. I had no idea that Gu Xian had admired me for so long. During our days together, he had never crossed any lines. His manners were impeccable, his care thoughtful, but suddenly I remembered. I remembered the slight chill of his fingers when he tugged at the ribbon under my chin that day, and the words that drifted by my ear. "Jing Yao, you're free now." I realized it wasn't my imagination. The signs had been there all along.
But how did I feel about him?
I searched within myself and found no answer.
14.
In the half-month that followed, I tried my best to avoid Gu Xian. Wherever he appeared, I made sure not to be there. Even at dinner, I insisted on eating alone in my room. But he caught me eventually. Blocking my way, he lowered his gaze, a dark, shadowy look in his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was thick with suppressed emotion. "Yao Nyang, you're avoiding me." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. He had always been perceptive. I sighed softly, realizing I couldn't avoid him any longer. If so, it was better to ask clearly. Lifting my head to look at him, I asked, Gu Xian, what exactly do you like about me? Mother had said he had long harbored feelings for me. But for what reason? Was it merely childhood friendship mistaken for love? Gu Xian seemed to guess what I was thinking. His lips curved into a faint smile, and his voice carried a soft, indulgent tone. You must be thinking I want to marry you simply because of the affection we had as children. But it's not that simple. You might not know, after you left, I once went to the capital to see you. I saw you laughing under the sun, talking to your elder sister. Your smile, your bright eyes, they were so dazzling, like a painting come to life. In that moment, I understood. I liked you. I had always liked you. That's why I traveled so far, just to catch a glimpse of you. But back then, your heart was full of Shan Yanchu, and your mother said you would marry him. So I could only leave quietly. I didn't get to marry the one I loved. But you married the one you loved. I thought, at least you were happy. But then you came back. As he spoke, his eyes shone unusually bright, and the smile on his lips deepened. The sunlight glinted off his black hair, making it shimmer like silk. Lowering his eyes to meet mine, he spoke each word with deep affection. You ask me what I like about you. I like the way you call my name, wearing your pink dress and smiling like spring. I like the way your eyes curve when you smile. I like the way you stubbornly pretend to be fine, even when your eyes are red from crying. I like the way you hang your head in silence when you're angry. There are so many things I like about you. I could never list them all at once. If I were to tell you everything I like about you, I'd need a lifetime. Yao Nyang, would you be willing to listen? His confession weighed heavily on my heart, tinged with a slight bitterness and an aching sweetness. His eyes were filled with shimmering light, cautious yet full of hope, as if my answer would decide whether he soared or fell. I had never known there was someone in this world who loved me so persistently, so humbly. 15. For some reason, my mind flashed back to my previous life, when my aunt had traveled thousands of miles from Zhuliang to the capital to bring me home. Gu Xian had been there too, silent and steady. He had looked at me with an expression full of hidden anguish. His thin lips had trembled before he finally spoke, voice low and earnest. Third sister, don't be afraid. Come home with us. Back then, I hadn't understood the look in his eyes. Now I did. He had loved me. All along. In this moment, my heart swelled almost painfully, emotions crashing inside me like waves. It hurt a little. It stung. After a long pause, I finally whispered, Gu Xian, I'm not easy to love. He froze. Under the sunlight, he looked impossibly handsome. Bright eyes brimming with tenderness, sculpted lips, a straight nose, and a profile so beautiful it almost hurt to look at. I suddenly smiled, a little mischievously. I won't allow my husband to think of any other woman. I won't allow him to take any concubines. He must stay by my side alone, no matter how bad I become. He must stay with me. As I spoke, a soft warmth blossomed in my chest. I reached out gently and took his cold hand. His eyes widened in disbelief. Then, in the next second, he clutched my hand tightly, as if never willing to let go again. His voice was hoarse with emotion. Yao Nyang, that's exactly what I had planned. So don't be afraid. His final words melted into the moment he pulled me into his arms. I lifted my hand and placed it on his back, only to realize he was trembling slightly. My nose tingled. A single tear slipped silently down my lashes. But the next second I smiled. From now on, someone would love me as fiercely as life itself. 16. After agreeing to the engagement, my days grew even busier. Busy embroidering my wedding dress, busy writing letters to my parents, busy dealing with Gu Xian, who would find any excuse to come and bother me. I was so busy that I almost forgot about Shen Yanchu altogether. So when he suddenly appeared in front of me, I was caught off guard for a moment. His gaze fixed intently on me. Yao Nyang, are you doing well? I nodded. I'm doing quite well. Then I added pointedly, Young Master Shin, there isn't much between us. To avoid any misunderstanding, please don't call me Yao Nyang. That was a form of address reserved for those truly close. Between Shen Yanchu and me, whether in the past life or this one, there had never been such closeness. Shen Yanchu froze, looking visibly shaken. His voice, when he spoke, was strained. I thought you liked me calling you that. I don't anymore. I stopped liking it long ago. There wasn't the slightest hesitation in my voice. All the feelings of the previous life, I no longer wanted any part of them. Shun Yen Chu naturally understood the unspoken meaning in my words. His fists clenched nervously. When he spoke again, his tone carried a rare humility. Yao Nyang, Miss Shen, I've finally figured it out. In my past life, it wasn't that I didn't love you. I just didn't know how to face you. Ronga had saved my life. I once vowed to love only her for the rest of my days. But I fell for you. In that moment, I became a traitor to my own oath. I couldn't face myself, and even less so you. So I kept lying to myself, convincing myself that I didn't love you. But in the end, it only hurt you deeply. If I had treated you well back then, maybe we could have lived happily. Maybe I wouldn't have had to watch you marry another man. I looked at him and sighed lightly. Shun Yen Chu, I don't want to talk about the past anymore. The oppression, the suffering I endured in my past life. No one cared. And it wasn't worth remembering. I didn't want to recall it anymore. Shun Yen Chu's eyes reddened instantly, but looking at him, I felt no ripple in my heart. Miss, it's time to go. I nodded, stepping around him without hesitation, walking steadily toward where I needed to be. I could feel Shen Yanchu's gaze burning into my back, never once moving away. My maid whispered beside me, Miss, he's still staring at you. I paused for a moment, then smiled faintly. Let him. But I won't look back. Never again. 17. Before the wedding, I returned to the capital. Wearing a veil as I walked down the streets, everything felt strangely unfamiliar. I had been raised in Suliang. I was not like the noble young ladies of the capital, graceful and elegant. In my bones, I was a small-minded, jealous girl. I didn't like living according to rules. I didn't like pretending to be the perfect noble lady. I wanted to live freely and happily. In my past life, I was trapped in the capital for a lifetime, wasting away for a man who never loved me. In this life, I returned to Suliang. I lived freely, and I met someone who loved me with all his heart. How wonderful that was. On the day of my wedding, my elder sister came too. She stood far away, her eyes red and puffy. Yao Nyang, I'm sorry. For everything. I was wrong. The elder sister, who had always been so proud across 2 lifetimes, was finally admitting her fault for the first time. My heart ached. I quickly looked away and wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes. As we were about to leave, I passed by her side. For some reason, I stumbled slightly. She instinctively reached out to catch me, but I pressed her hand down. I whispered softly, Elder sister, I'm leaving. In an instant, her tears fell like rain. I smiled faintly and walked step by step toward the bridal sedan chair that awaited me.
Steady.
Walking toward my own happiness. At the end of the procession, lower the sedan. The bride has arrived. A hand lifted the red curtain before me, pale and slender under the red cloth, like polished jade. And then I heard Gu Xian's low, gentle voice. My wife. 2 simple words. Yet they were spoken with such deep, lingering affection. My face flushed red instantly. I placed my hand into his palm, and word by word, said clearly, My husband, hold me tightly.
Hold my hand.
Never let go in this lifetime. In the next instant, he clutched my hand tightly.
So tightly.
His voice choked with emotion. All right. Never letting go. End of main story. Shun Yen Chu's side story.
01.
My life was far from smooth. After that fire, I had carried Hirong out in front of everyone, skin against skin. The scene was witnessed by all. Hirong was a very clever woman. With just a few words, she convinced the crown prince of her innocence, making him all the more grateful for her survival and using the incident to suppress the favored secondary consort Shi. But I wasn't so lucky. No matter how flawless my explanations were, a barrier had formed in the crown prince's heart. The crown prince was never a wise heir apparent. He was suspicious, stubborn, and liked to believe he was cleverer than he was. For a long time, I didn't understand why Hirong had chosen the crown prince as the future emperor. Later I realized. She didn't care what kind of man the crown prince was. What she wanted was to control the ruler himself, to bend the entire court to her will. Rather than being a wife, she was more of a strategist. Everyone around her was just a pawn on her chessboard. Thus, when the crown prince began targeting me at court, she never once lifted a hand to help. She was testing my worth. If I proved useless, she could simply discard me without a second thought. Cold-blooded, heartless. So different from her younger sister. 02. He Jingyao. She was gentle, kind, even a little timid. I knew she had grown up in Suliang City, living a carefree childhood. When she first arrived in the capital, she was often mocked for her lack of refined manners. But she was a quick learner. Within 3 months, she carried herself with more grace and poise than any girl in the capital. And I knew she liked me. She thought it was I who had saved her. But she didn't know that even our first encounter had been carefully arranged by me and Hirong. All to make her fall for me. All to ensure she would marry me. After we married, she often looked at me with those expectant eyes. I knew what she was hoping for. But I never responded. She was hurt, disappointed. Yet she never said a word. Until the day she discovered the sandalwood box filled with love poems I had written for Hirong. She screamed at me, beat me with her fists, collapsed in sobs. I had thought I would find her pathetic, annoying, even. But instead, my heart ached. And yet, how could I allow myself to ache? I had vowed that I loved only Hirong. So I ran away. After that, He Jingyao never looked at me with expectation again. It was as if she had finally given up. Until the day she died in my arms. She had asked me, with a trembling voice, "Could you call me Yao Nyang just once?" But I couldn't say the words. And in that moment, her eyes completely dimmed. She said, "In the next life, I won't marry you." Panic seized me, but it was already too late. She was gone. And in the next life, just as she said, she didn't marry me. 03. On the day of her wedding, I went. I watched her, dressed in red, marrying another man. I remembered him. In the previous life, he had never married. On the day He Jingyao died, he had traveled thousands of miles, storming into the capital to snatch her coffin from the Shen family. He had even caused an uproar before the throne. Pointing at Hirong's face, he had cursed her as cold-blooded, unworthy of being an elder sister. Hirong had been furious. But deep down, she knew she owed her sister a great debt. In the end, she had nodded her consent. And so, He Jingyao's coffin was carried away from the Shen family step by step into the Gu family's hands. In the last life, I lost He Jingyao. And in this life, I lost her again. For a moment, standing there, I remembered the day I had married He Jingyao in our past life. She had blushed, her voice soft as she said, "Husband, hold on to me." At the time, I had not answered her. But I remembered clearly. It was Gu Xian whose eyes had reddened. And it was Gu Xian who had spoken. He had said, "All right.
All right.
He Jingyao. In this life, I will live alone. Let it be my atonement for the last. Even though you stopped caring long ago." The end.